Our very last family in the order Carnivora is Mephitidae. Mephitidae are the skunks. And I do want to tell you, back in my day, in fact, even back in when I first started teaching at FLCC, skunks were still considered to be part of the weasel family. You know, all the genetic and DNA stuff that you guys take for granted in your daily lives is a very recent scientific innovation. So, although they do still look like weasels, and in many cases act like weasels, genetically they're different enough that they deserve their own family. I do want to point out that this is my photo, and this is in my side yard a bunch of years ago. We were all standing out in the front yard doing something, and this skunk just comes walking across the cornfield from across the road, crosses, and ends up in my side yard. So I run in the house, grab my camera. I do have to say that most people think about skunks as being nocturnal, and it is true that they spend most of their time out at night, but not all of it. And I think skunks already put people in a state of panic because of the smell that they can produce, and just seeing one out during the day might be just enough to send people over the edge. We only have one species of skunk in New York State, a striped skunk. But in North America, there's other species. There's hognose skunk, there's hooded skunk, and then there's even a spotted skunk. So you don't have to know any of those, but I wanted you to know that they exist. So, if you see a skunk in New York and it looks like this, and if you see a skunk in New York and it looks like this, you are looking at the same species. They can vary for the amount of white that they have. There's skunks that just barely have any white at all, just on the little top of their head. There are other skunks that are almost completely white. But if it's in New York, it is a striped skunk. Skunks have some incredibly long front claws. They're diggers. Now, they don't dig because they want to live and work underground. They dig because they want to eat the grubs. So we get skunks in our lawn all the time because I've got lots of grubs. I don't pay anybody to come and spray poison on my lawn when I can have the skunks just come and do it for free. So I want you to look here. First, 5 toes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if they at one time thought that this was a weasel, well, of course it has 5 toes. And then I want you to look at the ridiculously long claw here. Do you see it? Here's another one that's really visible. This one, the puncture is here, but then the rest of the nail, it doesn't really show all that much. Let me delete that red. It makes it look like skunks are part grizzly bear, doesn't it? Do you remember? Do you remember how long we talked about grizzly bears' claws being? Skunks have just absolutely super long front claws. And here's a picture that really shows it. In 2015, we had a skunk that was denning under, well, it's now our garden shed. It used to be my daughter's playhouse when she was little. It was an old woodchuck hole, and the skunk just took it over. And quite honestly, I didn't even know the skunk was there. I think that's an important thing to note if I can go on this little side journey. We never, ever once smelled the skunks that were living 15 feet from our main entrance of our house. It wasn't until one day when I actually saw the skunk out in my lawn that I knew that we had skunks there. And I got to tell you, I have hundreds of pictures of her. She's got a tick embedded in her face right here just behind her eye, and you can tell my pictures over time which ones are newer and which ones are older pictures by the size change of the tick as it gets bigger. And I would sit in a lawn chair and just read and wait for the skunk to show up, and she would come out. And I think she had to be active during the day because she had mouths to feed. She had to get more food. She couldn't just wait till night because she was nursing babies. And she would come and dig grubs in the lawn, and I would just quietly lay down and take pictures. And I've got a telephoto lens on my camera, so everything looks bigger. And so one time I'm clicking away, and she gets curious about the noise and starts walking towards me. And it's this gorgeous series of pictures. Click, 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 click. She's getting closer, closer. And all of a sudden, my camera won't focus anymore because she's so close. And I look up from my viewfinder, and she is 15 feet from me and still walking towards me. I didn't want to stand up, right? I didn't want to all of a sudden get big and scare her. So I just literally rolled on my side and just rolled away. And the clicking noise, of course, stopped. She stopped being curious, looked around, and then just stayed right where she was and started digging up grubs there. It's a bit of a sad story, though, with the babies here. I almost called them cubs. I think they're kits. One day, I went out for a jog, and I come back. It's raining, and I look in the side yard, and it looks like my daughter's left something out in the rain. So I come in the driveway, doing my cool down, and I walk briskly over to it, and it's a baby skunk. And I find another one, and they're soaked. I want you to look at this picture here. Now, cool and adorable, but eyes are still cemented closed here. That makes skunks not altricial, but that other word. Instead of being very advanced, they're very primitive. That's not the right word that I wanted to say. They're born naked, blind, and helpless. Precocial is the word. Gosh, I said that all backwards, didn't I? I'm not going to go back and edit it. Let's fix it on the fly. It makes them altricial, not precocial. Good Lord, I'm so sorry. These guys were born naked, blind, and helpless. They're still blind, so there's no way they're supposed to be out. They wandered out of the den. So I was afraid to just put them right back in the den because they were wet. So my daughter and I brought them in the house. We wrapped them in this towel, dried them off. Never once did they squeak or complain. We gave them a little bit of water, and you can see their scent glands here. I don't think they're even fully developed when they're this age. It did help that my wife was at work when this all happened. And we took these two babies, we put them back in the den, and then we stuffed some straw so that they couldn't just crawl themselves back out again. So I said it was a bit of a sad story. I don't know the survival of these guys. I don't know whatever ended up happening to them. It does stand to reason that they were probably okay because we dried them off and got them back in. But why were they out in the first place? Maybe something was even wrong with mom, and we shouldn't have even put them back in there. I have only seen one other species of skunk in my life, and this was down in Chile. If you watch the Puma, Mountain Lion, Cougar, Panther PowerPoint, you know what I'm talking about. And I got super close to these skunks. They just, I don't know, just didn't care, right? If you're a skunk and you smell terrible, of course you don't care. Well, one day I was hiking, and probably a bad idea to let your mind wander when you're hiking in mountain lion country, but all of a sudden there's a little bit of a rain in the air, and all of a sudden I hear this stamping noise, and I look down, and I have walked right up on top of a skunk without even realizing it. By the way, now you can see why they're called hognose skunk. And this skunk was stamping on the ground to warn me to get away. Please, let's look again. Can I just show you this picture? This is a different individual than the other one. Look how this species of skunk goes from brown to white to black. And then I want you to see that despite this brown, white, and black skunk, it has those same ridiculously long front claws for digging. And when I say stamped on the ground, I got to show you another picture here. Like he would rear up on his hind legs and then slam his feet onto the ground. This is not a referee telling me I just scored a touchdown. It was really cool. It was an enjoyable experience. Hey, let me teach you how to tell mink and skunk skulls apart. This is one, I'd love to teach you all of the skulls, but we're limited in what I can teach you guys. So let's do skunk and mink. Skunk and mink are about the same size. They're both pretty common here in the Finger Lakes, so you're likely to be able to find their skulls. Let's look at one obvious difference right here. Look at how the mink has a pinched in brain case and the skunk does not. So already off the bat, I could give you just that one characteristic, and you really should be able to tell these guys apart. Eyes are close to the snout, eyes are close to the snout, and a carnivore tooth pattern. But let's turn these skulls and look at them from the side. One of these skulls is flat, this one. And one of these skulls is not. Look how arched this one is. So tell me, which one is the flat one, the mink or the skunk? If you said mink, you are absolutely correct. Remember, he's the one that's semi-aquatic. Skunks don't have a flat head. But there's one more thing that I would want to show you here, and that is the back tooth pattern. Now, I think I said in the beginning there that they've got carnivore tooth pattern in the front here. They've got stabbers. But if we look towards the back of the mouth, notice the very last molar. And let's look at some professional photos instead of mine. On a skunk, the last molar is square. Please do not write nasty comments on my YouTube channel about that not being perfectly square. Look, it's a giant grindstone. That is an omnivore tooth pattern with a stabber in the front and a grinder in the back. Although I talked about skunks eating grubs, they also eat roots and other plant material as well. Here is a mink. Stabber in the front, slicer here in the back, two slicers, and then this molar isn't quite as broad. Now it's still a bit of a grindstone, but it's nothing huge and massive like that skunk one was. I think of the mink molar as being mashed or mushed together, and so mink molar is mushed, skunk molar is square. So when I line these two specimens back up from the back room, I can see the omnivore compared to the carnivore. Huge difference to the way their tooth is. And I like those last two characteristics. The one's got a flat head and the other one doesn't, and one's got an omnivore tooth pattern and the other one doesn't. Because that tells you a lot more about their lifestyle, right? You're not just memorizing some random fact. You're applying some knowledge that we already learned. Well, who's the omnivore? Well, who's the semi-aquatic one? And that should help you tell them apart. Goodness, folks, do you know what we have left? One more order, Artiodactyla, all the hoofed critters. Let's do those next week. Let's not worry about it this week. Let's concentrate it on next week.